Thanks for checking out my video. If you want to learn more from me, I have a lot of classes on Udemy. You can find the links to a lot of those in the description. So I've been digging a lot more into the Nergak lately, particularly in my Magic for Hire and also in the back cogs of my mind in my free time. So the formula for the Nergak is extremely similar to those of the 50 Names of Marduk, save for a couple of extra tools that you used. The 50 Names of Marduk is primarily just the two candles and then the sigil and then the script and your visualizations and intention and whatnot. But the Nergak have the black mirror, and you're supposed to visualize the seal or like the sigil of the Nergak spirit on the mirror. And what it talks about is you have the paper right below the black mirror, and then you have the black mirror behind it. And you stare at the black mirror and try to picture that sigil on the mirror. Now, the focus of this spirit sigil or seal on the black mirror is what is supposed to establish contact or breach the dimensions from ours to theirs and then call to that spirit. The invocation prayer, the Zika Kanpa, Ziana Kanpa, Zidinger Kia Kanpa, Zidinger Anakanpa, hear me, O thou name, come to me by the powers of the word, power word, and answer my urgent prayer, right? Sounds exactly the same as the 50 Names of Marduk, mainly because the methodology is extremely similar. Now, from one of my sources that's really, really, really into the Necronomicon mythos and even longer than I have been, says that these Nergak spirits aren't exactly like the system, so they're not like 100% legit according to him, but whoever created the Nergak spirits or this book does understand the system enough to make this kind of thing work. And so why is that, right? Well, the formula is pretty much exactly the same as the 50 Names of Marduk, and then you want to go into like the in-depth psychology, the subconscious and whatnot, if you're going with a psychological model, which I always lean on, for how and why it works. Well, when we read the different sigils, we understand that this demon, this sigil, works with these kinds of powers. So we're already priming our minds that when we work with this particular spirit, these are the kind of energies that we're calling forth. And then that focus that we give that sigil with the subconscious knowing of it means A, B, C, and D, then as we're gazing at the sigil and our conscious mind is focused on just visualizing the sigil on the black mirror, your subconscious is in the background calling up those different energies that are associated with that spirit. So as our focus is on the sigil and we're visualizing it on the black mirror, we are making contact with the spirit, or we are making the connection from conscious to subconscious of this particular name means these particular attributes, whether it's strength, psychic power, vigor, conquering your enemies, da 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 da. But if you lean on the more of the spirit model, of course, sigils are seen as like keys to communicating with the spirit or having a speed dial for a spirit, and therefore we are establishing contact with them, and then through our offerings we do this exchange of I scratch my back, you scratch, or I scratch your back, you scratch mine, that kind of thing. So, with the Nergak spirits, the flavor of them is very different. From my own experience, and I wonder about yours if you've worked with them, their energy is much more direct. It's much more like the 15 Names of Marduk is almost like having a friend help you out with something. Their energy feels a lot more welcoming-ish, but the Nergak spirits seem like somebody that you hire to do stuff. They're much more direct, they're much more blunt, and I mean, I kind of like it, you know, much more work driven, business driven, from my experience. And I was trying to think of what else I could talk about with these kinds of things, but one of the things would be that it specifically denotes a sacrifice when working with the Nergak spirits. And I think that this adding this context to working with the Nergak spirits can kind of help you understand and even add this kind of thing to the 50 names of Marduk, because it does talk a bit about the Agamasaratu in here in the Nergak book, and that isn't specifically stated in the Necronomicon spellbook. That's probably because the Necronomicon spellbook is just, the 50 Names of Marduk section extracted from the Simon Necronomicon, and then it gives you the prayer, which technically speaking isn't even listed in the Simon Necronomicon if you want to find that interesting. But given that it talks about the Agamasaratu in here, there is a piece missing where it doesn't talk about working with and invoking your watcher with the preliminary invocation and then the normal invocation. But that's the context that you kind of have to pick up, because this book should be used in conjunction with the Simon Necronomicon. I don't think, technically speaking, that it should stand on its own, because if you use the Agamasaratu in here and you are doing an invocation or the burning of the offerings in it, then who is it going to if you haven't done the preliminary and then normal invocations of your watcher? Technically speaking, it might be going to your watcher who you haven't established contact with yet. But if you read the Book of the Watcher, you would understand that watchers are very fierce entities, and, working with them incorrectly can lead to some bad things happening, right? So you would want to do the invocation of the watcher and establish contact with your watcher and have the Agamasaratu and also the sword of the watcher in order to make this kind of thing work effectively and properly. So this is another one of those things about the Simon Necronomicon system as a whole. This book says, just do this stuff in here and you're good, right? But those that dig into it more and study into it more understand that this is a puzzle piece. Just because it says that this entire thing can, get up and go on its own, technically, yes, it can, but it's much more effective and arguably safer to take a look at this and understand it's a puzzle piece and plug it in with the Simon Necronomicon and say, okay, this doesn't have everything it needs. I need to take a look at the Simon Necronomicon and see what else it needs in order to make it complete. So this is but part of the bigger system. So when you start to work with this, you're gonna come to understand, maybe from this video or other ones that I'm gonna make in the future, that you need more than this. You need to work with your watcher. And now, so with the Bowl of the Watcher in here, the Agamasaratu, you're supposed to burn some offerings of, I should really underline this section, honestly. Yep. Working with, the sacrifice will dramatically increase the effects of your magic. There are several types of offerings ranging from bread and rice, alcohol, wine, to human or menstrual blood and semen. The offering will be performed in the Agamasaratu, right? Now, technically speaking, in the Agamasaratu in the Simon Necronomicon, it mainly talks about pine, sandalwood, or cedar. So adding these other things when you burn offerings, would they add extra oomph? Yes. Is it providing you with more materials and more ideas of, come on, get out of the video, girlfriend. Does it give you more ideas of what to use as offerings? Sure. Is that going to make your magic deeper and more effective? Yes, but you got to understand this stuff in full context. So I would definitely suggest picking up the fragments of Nergak and working with it, but you got to read the Simon Necronomicon along with it, and I would honestly say have some experience with the 50 Names of Marduk before you work on it, because it is technically and arguably easier because there are less tools involved. I'm actually planning on making a video after I dig through this entire book of all the different materials that you would need if you were to want to work with all of the 50, because some of them call for, cords, some of them call for wax dolls, all of them call for the Agamasaratu and stuff like that. So you get more of like a bigger picture. If I can sit down and really dig the hell out of this thing. I'm starting to feel a little sick, so I might end up having a day off of work, in which case I would probably work on that. So stay tuned for that one. I know this video is going to go up like 2 months um, after I post it, because I always like to schedule my stuff ahead. But if you've worked with the Nergak spirits, let me know what your experiences are, or if you have any questions, comments, complaints, concerns, issues with the book that you would want me to address. I'm trying to keep my cat away from the video so I can actually end this here, but it doesn't look like I'm going to get any reprieve. So, good hunting.